can.
Yeah, we should have done that. We're saying free something here, free food. There was breakfast. I know, but if we would have had free food, we would have 400 people in here. They would have stood up from there. What? Mere moments?
How you guys roll?
Hi everybody, this is Mark Horvath and we're broadcasting live from the Beacon Lounge at South by Southwest. And I'm truly honored to have one of my heroes here today, Jeff Pulver. And first I need to thank the people that are making this happen, the Beacon Lounge, What Gives, and Convio is helping put this particular show together. And what we're trying to do is just get some content to help nonprofits out there navigate the social media space, the technology space, because for some of us it's a big scary world. So thank you, Jeff.
Pleasure to be here.
I love Jeff just because he's been a big supporter of what I do, and when I think of Jeff, I don't think of technology, I think of human. He brings Twitter and social media into real life.
Well, last year I learned how to spell two words: humanity and serendipity. And I think the amazing thing about the world we're living in right now is that we have an open hailing frequency where you can connect with the digital soul to almost anyone. As long as people are willing to let themselves be slightly vulnerable and not be so skeptical, amazing things can happen, and we see it and feel it. It's just it's an absolutely wonderful place to be. But if you just tell people that, yes, go invest in social media because you can feel humanity, it doesn't really work.
Right.
But it turns out that we're living in a time right now that we've never had. 500 years post-Columbus, the world became flat again. And that, for the first time in a long time since the commercialization of the internet, we moved as a society from just going to places like Google and asking questions in our private way to being able to make statements on Twitter, and then all of a sudden having your voice magnified. The reality is that people would stand up and change the world. People would stand up and say something. It didn't matter whether they have 3 people following them or 100 people following them. Someone follows, they retweet it, and all of a sudden it's heard. And depending on what's being said, it can be heard 1,000 or 1,000,000 times. And that has a tremendous impact, because all of a sudden people whose voices were never heard from now be heard from. And if you're passionate about something, you can stand up and share your passion and maybe inspire other people to do what you believe in. And so we've never had that before, and it's very humbling. It's very humbling to be able to actually see what happens. And on the other hand, if you've ever wanted to affect change, now is your chance.
I totally agree that it's very humbling, because here I'm some guy out of Los Angeles and I jump on social media a year ago, and here I'm sitting with you at South by Southwest. And
I think I'm the one who's honored to sit here.
Stop. But you brought up...
Actually, if you remember, I actually didn't know you when I first invited you to come talk. I didn't know you. I knew your character hardly normal.
Right.
And I saw what you were doing. I said, oh my God, this is amazing. And I felt that if I had a chance to amplify your voice and let your story be told so the other people could learn what was going on, that was something good to do.
You brought up a good point, which is vulnerability, because especially in the nonprofit space, we're scared to be transparent. We're scared as an organization to be that vulnerable. I know for my own self, I think one of the reasons that Invisible People has had success is that I share both the good and the bad. I don't just pick and choose and say, oh, we're territorial, we can't do that. Any tricks or advice on it? Because it takes a lot of courage to do that.
Well, I think the really hard part is to really understand who you are as an individual. And if you're willing to actually go back to a point in time where maybe you were invisible yourself or felt that, then you could relate it to a bigger audience. I mean, for me, I think I'll always be a lonely 9-year-old kid. I mean, what got me involved ultimately in my first experience in social media was amateur radio. Because when I was 9 years old, I was in elementary school, and I was sort of by myself. And that I don't know if anyone ever has felt alone or totally alone, but I spent 3 years obsessed to getting a license to communicate. I mean, imagine if you had to study Morse code, electronic theory, and rules and regulations to go on the internet. That's what I did. And by the time I was 12, I finally had this license to talk to the world, and that, if people know me on Twitter, they may see me say good morning. What I used to do every day is say CQ, CQ, this is WA2BOT calling CQ and standing by. And I would be online I'd be on the radio 40 to 60 hours a week. And the thing was, back on the radio, I could tune the dial and I could hear people talking and I could hear their voices. I actually knew their personality. It did not matter where in the world they were there. They were characters. And I was able to, rarely did I ever meet these people, but I felt comfortable with them. And that, years later, I'm not saying CQ, I just say good morning, and I have a very similar effect. And part of that, growing up on the radio, sets you up in terms of, like, one of the things I used to always do is play the role of Radar O'Reilly. So during, I used to always pass messages and stuff between family members during holiday season and during disasters and stuff. And I always felt I learned how to give. I mean, I learned everything I needed to know about the internet, a long time ago on the radio. And the culture sort of transcends it. And so, part of what I do these days is I do believe in giving. I believe in philanthropy. And it's not a matter of how much you give. I mean, some people have religious charities, medical charities, passion charities. People like to give and try to affect change and do things that are just real. And one of the frustrations I run into is trying to explain to people who run these organizations how to leverage these platforms. But it turns out, unfortunately, in real life, some charities that raise hundreds of millions of dollars each year do so when people die. And I really don't have a technology solution for that because that's the mindset of those charities. But when I look at myself, I'm always lonely. It's just part of that. And I think that being vulnerable on the internet or being vulnerable on social media, letting yourself feel something and have feelings, that's something you really can't teach people. But if you do allow yourself to feel emotion, that transcends both the business side, because at the end of the day, most businesses have to realize that there are people usually behind tweets. And that if you're putting a message out and you're connecting with somebody, there's real value there. And then when you see individuals, I mean, I think one of the most amazing things was when I saw your work and the fact that we're able to put visibility on people who are normally invisible, and we're able to use a platform like Twitter to actually make that happen, you affect change. And you're able to go around the country and find people who are feeling pretty invisible and put a camera on them, and that, be able to then make not stars, but really make people feel good about who they are and what they do. And when you connect with that human spirit, the digital soul of people, amazing things can happen, and that there's a real value here. So the challenge you have, right, as a charity or depending upon whether you want to give money to a charity, you want to help do fundraising, or you're a charity yourself trying to figure out how to leverage this, is who do you connect to, and how do you connect to it, and then how do you get that message out, and how do you keep it real. But if you ever were lonely, I mean, I'm always like worried about this, even now. And so I was just last night on 6th Street with thousands of people walking by, but I was by myself. And you can be alone in a big crowd, you can be alone in a small crowd. And so, but if you look at instant messaging, anyone who ever used ICQ was built by him, so this is ICQ. Yep. And it's, there's a fundamental level of humanity built into all these platforms that enable us to connect and communicate. But in terms of where we're going, it's, I don't think this is a transient thing. I think that humanity has changed a little bit, and that, for me personally, I think being able to share your voice. I mean, I have friends of mine in the audience today recently went to Tanzania, and they went to teach kids how to tweet, but they went to the school the same day the school got electricity, and they were able to not only get the electricity, they got the internet. And now there's a generation of people who are growing up being able to communicate, sort of like next generation pen pals. When we're going out to the streets of around the country and we're finding people, we're raising money or creating awareness for people, it's very much the same. We're putting a lens on things, and we can affect that change. And that
We're bringing it back to human.
it has to be human.
And you bring up a good point. We only have about a minute left, but you're bringing up the best point, and it's a good point to close on, is that as we look at all these technologies and we look at the social media space, we got to get back to the fundamentals, or never forget the fundamentals, I should say, of human interaction, whether it be face-to-face or over the phone. It's the same thing. And if you treat people right with respect, anything's possible. Thank you very much for spending some time.
Thanks for having me here.